FM 94, The Dark. It is that time again. It's time to get to know a band we play here on The Dark. And tonight on the line, I'm talking with Dawn Botti from the band New Day Dawn. And this is a band actually out on the East Coast. I believe they're out of New Jersey. First of all, Dawn, thanks so much for joining us on The Dark. And how are you doing?
It is my pleasure to join you. I'm doing well. I'm actually speaking to you from the big city, the Big Apple of New York City today. You're right, we're from New Jersey, but I'm in New York at the moment.
Very cool. Well, what's the weather like in New York today? Okay, so last weekend we had highs in the mid-60s. Today we're barely even pushing 20, and looks like we'll have below zero weather tonight. So that's what we have. What's it like in the Big Apple right now?
Yeah, well, we've been doing some yo-yo weather ourselves. Right now, as we speak, it's about 62 degrees out. I'm looking out my window, and people are walking around, in T-shirts and jeans. But apparently, tonight it's supposed to snow and go down to 17 degrees tomorrow. So go figure.
Go figure. Yeah. It just, us northern people, I guess, it just makes you stronger, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Like anything else in life, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger.
Absolutely. Hey, let's talk about the band New Day Dawn, and how did this band all come about?
Sure. So, our story is a little bit different than probably the typical band story. The band is made up of me. I'm the lead singer and rhythm guitar player, and my husband, Gary, who's on drums. And Gary and I used to be in a band years and years ago when we were young pups called Slush Puppy. And it was a band that played a lot in New York City and the like. And we went through sort of, the issues that bands have and ended up breaking up. And Gary and I had been married for a couple years at that point, and we really wanted to start a family. So we said, you know what, maybe it's time to kind of give up the dream of trying to do music. We got pretty far. Matt Pinfield was playing us on K-Rock, and they said we were the next big thing to come out of New York City. So we were all revved up and thought, that was going to be the future of the band. And then when things kind of fell apart, we just decided, maybe it was time to look to go a different route. And so we had a baby, and I became a mom, and at that point, I really thought that my rock and roll career was kind of over because it's hard to have a family and try to do the band at the same time. And so New Day Dawn was really just supposed to be a hobby. It was supposed to be something that kind of just lived locally in New Jersey, and it was something I could do on the side while I was raising a family and having a career and all of that. And long story short, we caught the eye of a manager who took my songs to Chris Henderson from the band Three Doors Down.
Yep.
This is about 6 years ago, and he heard the music, and he really liked it, and he offered to produce, to have me fly down to Nashville and to produce a record for us, for me. And so we came back with this record with a couple songs with help from Chris Henderson of Three Doors Down. And then after that, got some more help from a good friend of ours, John Moyer, from the band Disturbed. He's the bass player,
Yep.
and he's a great producer as well. And all of a sudden, it kind of took me out of retirement. Like, well, maybe our music and our songwriting is good, and we shouldn't just think of this as a hobby. So about 5 years ago, we went back on the road, and this is now the third release for the band. That you're playing the single, The Broken, which is coming off the third release, and we should probably have that out around this summer. We'll release that record.
Very cool. Very cool. There's a lot I could go with questions. First of all, I guess you're in a band with your husband. How did you and your husband meet? Because obviously you had said that you got a band going with your husband at the time. So what was the attraction, and how did you guys get together to begin with?
So we are high school sweethearts.
Okay.
We met in high school. I was 15. I can't believe it. And he was, I guess, 17 because he was driving a car, and they needed a singer for their band. I don't want to date myself, but let's just say that the music that was popular on the radio back then, which they were playing as a high school band, had very high vocalists, like the pitch-wise, the singers were high, like, hair metal 80s music.
I kind of figured that,
And
80s.
stuff like that, right? Yeah, there you go. And so none of the boys in the high school could sing it, but I could. So they said, "Hey, you come be in our band." So it started out, we were doing it in high school in a cover band.
Very cool. So what did you cover then? I guess since you had
Oh my
the
God.
high vocal range here, what were some of the songs and some of the bands that you covered then back then?
Well, it's funny because you could probably hear a little bit of the influence in our music if you
Right.
if you listen closely. But like the Scorpions,
Okay.
Dokken, Rush. I mean, I loved Pat Benatar. I grew up learning how to sing by listening to her records.
Right.
God, Boston. I mean, that was old stuff. But 38 Special. I don't know. A lot of top 40 radio, a lot of the stuff that was popular back then. Motley Crue, Poison, Bon Jovi, that stuff.
Very cool. You mentioned those bands. Have you ever had a chance to meet any of the members of those bands that you used to cover back when you were a kid?
Yes, actually. So the really cool thing, when I went down to Nashville to work with Chris Henderson, he owns his own studio, and he co-owns it with Bobby Capps, who's the keyboard player for 38 Special. And so introduced me to Bobby, and I was completely starstruck because for that exact reason you said, I used to sing their songs back in the day. And Bobby liked one of my songs so much, he said to me, "Would you mind if I played keyboards on this track?" And I said, "Like, for free?" He said, "Yeah, because I hear a part, and I said, "Sure." So he's actually on our second release. He's playing on one of the tracks, and if you listen really closely and you kind of close your eyes and think of like "Hold On Loosely," you can totally hear that like signature, Bobby Capps keyboard part on this track. So that was a really great thing. And then I also got to meet Pat Benatar and Spider, her husband, Neil.
Right.
And I was just a blabbering idiot. It was like humana. I had no idea what to say to her. But it was wonderful. She was very gracious, and that was great too.
We're talking with Dawn, the lead singer of the band New Day. Dawn, they have a new song out right now with The Broken we're playing here on The Dark. But you mentioned kind of the flabbergasted, all that kind of stuff. And I got to believe that, you're out on performance, out on stage doing things, and you get a lot of people that come up to you and probably do that too, don't they?
They do, and, I always try to remind myself that when I get a little bit timid or flabbergasted to speak to another artist, because we've opened for so many artists, and if I get a little bit timid, I always think about how much I appreciate when people come up to me and they say, that song moved me, your voice is amazing, the band is amazing, whatever compliment they want to give, I'm always so, so appreciative to get that. And I always try very quickly to sort of make them feel comfortable and let them know that I'm nobody. I'm just somebody who enjoys music, and they're the ones that are actually really important, because if they're the ones that like our stuff, then, there's nothing more important than that. It's like I'm a servant to my audience and to the people that listen to my music.
Let's talk about your fan base. That kind of leads into my next question to that. I guess, where are you mainly out of? Do you get out across the whole United States, or are you more centrally in that East Coast side of things?
Well, to be honest, it's very easy to just stay East Coast, right? Because out of New Jersey, within a 2-3 hour drive, we've got Pennsylvania, New York City, Philadelphia, the rest of Pennsylvania. You've got New York City, you got upstate New York, Connecticut, Delaware. Can even drive up to Boston, real quick. Rhode Island. Like, it's very easy to get to a lot of the East Coast on sort of little weekend tours and things like that. So that's pretty much mostly what we do. But in 2013, we were on the lineup for Rocklahoma. So we came out west and hit a bunch of places, including St. Louis and Tulsa and Louisville, and toured a little bit there. We've done South by Southwest 4 or 5 years in a row. So we've come down to Texas. We've been all the way out to California. So we've made our way around the country, not in the traditional way that a band would, where we sort of taken off, a couple months at a time and got in a van and toured the whole country. Like I said, because I'm juggling a day job and a family and a bunch of other things. So it's a little of both.
You mentioned that the day job and the family. How hard is it to juggle that, especially when you're trying to do a profession that you're doing too on the side with the day job and, of course, being a mom, as you mentioned?
I don't sleep much.
I was going to ask.
Yeah, I actually I call it I love my career. I love both of my careers. I consider myself a musician, and my other career, I'm actually an attorney.
Very cool.
I'm an attorney. I work for AMC Networks, and I'm sort of the key lawyer on The Walking Dead, which some of your fans have heard of that little show. So I have a great job. I work for a great company. They appreciate that I'm also a musician. They're very supportive of it. They like the fact that I'm creative, and, as a lawyer, I get to work with very creative people. So it took me many years to find the right balance. When I first started off in law, I was in a very corporate setting. Had to wear a suit every day, had to come in at a certain time every day, and that didn't sort of jive well with trying to balance. But now that I've kind of found a way to work in an industry that appreciates my creative side, I'm lucky enough to be able to balance it. And then the other great thing is I work with a lot of musicians, helping them with their contracts or anything they need. I know, it's funny, we were up against Shallow Side in
the
battle of the bands, right, online. So, I've spoken to Cody and helped him a little bit with some booking and stuff. So it's a small family, and I'm happy to kind of give back if I can to any of the other independent bands that need help.
I was just going to say, Dawn, that is a great advantage for you to be a lawyer and to know the ins and outs of so many things, because, today's society of music, it is difficult to maneuver through to make yourself any money, and at least to have the experience of being someone that knows a lot of stuff about law and that. It's got to help you out tremendously, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, I think especially for an independent band, you do have to be your own business person. You do have to be your own manager. And in fact, if you can do a lot of that stuff yourself, it's going to make it much more economic for you, because you're not sharing 20% with a manager and another 10% with a lawyer, and go on down the list. I think it's important to build a team and to have a bunch of people that can help you, but there's also, sometimes I think bands are too quick to just want to turn over all the business stuff to other people and, say, oh, I'm just a musician. What do I know about, business? But at the end of the day, this is it's their baby, and nobody's going to care more about their music and about their careers and their visions as they will. So I always encourage them, stay involved. It's okay if you can't read, if you can't read a contract, the legal part of it, but it's also just words on a page that, you just have to ask, I don't understand this part. What does this mean? Because you should really understand the deals that you're making or that other people are, making for you.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of horror stories from bands that they thought they were doing this, and the next thing you know, they were getting basically screwed over and playing for free, and that really sucks, doesn't it?
Oh, it totally does. I mean, to be honest with you, I think one of the reasons I didn't just sort of throw caution to the wind and just do, being in a band and nothing else is because it's really, really hard out there to make it. I mean, even the bands that I know that are doing well, you would think they're doing well because their songs are on the radio and they're touring a lot, and a band like my band will make a couple $100 if we play a venue, but some of these bands are making thousands, and you'd think, God, they must be doing really well, but after they pay for their tour bus and they pay for all of their road crew and they pay for their manager and their lawyers and their booking agents, they're taking home like the pay of a waitress. It's really, or a waiter. It's very, very, very challenging.
We're talking with Dawn Botti. She's the lead singer of the band New Day Dawn. Their latest song is The Broken. I want to get to that in just a moment, but I do want to focus on one other thing. You had mentioned radio in that, and if you've been around the business a little bit, as you'd mentioned, you had the band Slush Puppy, and then you took a break to have a family. Now you're back at it. What have you noticed the biggest difference in rock radio from back when you were with Slush Puppy to now with New Day Dawn?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I'll tell you something. I don't see much of a difference, right? I don't see more female lead singers or more female presence in the hard rock radio landscape. I think back when I was doing it with Slush Puppy, it was 2000, right? It was like the late 90s, early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
And, you can count on one hand the amount of popular female artists in heavy rock radio. It was like Evanescence, Flyleaf, maybe. No, they came later. I don't even know if there was more than, right? It was a really limited circle. And now, you've got Lizzie Hale, and you've got In This Moment, and Lacey Sturm, but there's not that much else out there. And what I think is really missing is kind of the more mature female voice.
Right.
Right? Like when I was growing up, again, it was, you had Pat Benatar, and you had Hart, and you had Lita Ford, and you had Joan Jett, and, they're still kind of out there. Some of them are still out there rocking. So that's kind of one of the things I'm hoping to bring to radio is a little bit of a more mature perspective than maybe some of the other female lead singers.
I can see that. That's the one thing too. There is a lot of up and coming female fronted bands, but as you mentioned, they are on the young side, and I think a lot of times it's important to be seasoned in this business because sometimes you're a quick flash in the pan, but in the long run you're just going to fizzle out. And if you can be someone that's been around for a while, then at least knows the business, you have a better chance to have more longevity.
Yeah, it's that, and it's also, it comes across in the songwriting. So, the song The Broken, all the songs that are on the last release, those that are coming out on this release, I'm the main, almost the sole songwriter of the record, both the music and the lyrics. A lot of times, it's one of the reasons I kind of insist on playing the guitar and knowing all the, on stage and not just singing. It's like I really want to be part of the way the music sounds and the way the music comes across. And so all those songs are written from a perspective of a woman that, has had a family, has had a marriage for a long time, and has seen the ups and downs and, like, what it takes to have a successful marriage, and has gone through, like, all sorts of stuff that, and it comes out in the records, and you can sort of use your imagination when you listen to the lyrics, but it's just a different perspective that I bring that, somebody who's like in their early 20s who hasn't been married and has never been a mom and has never, maybe had another career or, business sense is going to bring that to the music.
Absolutely. We're talking to Dawn with the band New Day Dawn. I'm going to guess the reason for the name New Day Dawn is because you wanted to start over again? Is that kind of what the meaning of the name is? Or what is the meaning behind the band name?
Yeah, no, it's that. It's, it's kind of a nod, obviously, to my name and the fact that I do write all of the songs. When I came back out, people were saying, why don't you just call it the Dawn Botti Band? And I said, well, because it's not just me. It's not a solo project. I mean, the band is together. We write together. They come up with, their own parts, even though I'm kind of writing the basics of the song. I bring it to the band, and my husband, the drummer, he creates his own drum parts, and the bass player comes up with their parts. So I didn't want it to just come across as like they're my backup band. That's not what they are. So this was sort of an in-between way to say, like, yes, I'm a very important part of the music, but it's not a solo project. And then on top of it, it had exactly what you said, the, hey, it's a fresh start, we're coming back out again kind of meaning. So it just seemed to work perfect.
Very cool. And I see that I was reading here too, you have your own record label, which is Body Parts Music. I like that. I like that. That's cool.
Thank you.
That's very cool. I mean, who came up with that?
I think my husband came up with that.
Okay. You're giving your husband some credit? Wow.
Yes.
Did you hear that, guys?
Yes.
There's a woman out there that's going to give their husband some credit.
I give him a lot of credit.
Uh,
He's put up with me for many years, so he gets a lot of credit.
Actually, I first heard of you guys a couple of years ago with the song Runaway, and I really was intrigued by that song, and we still have it in our rotation here, and we play it every once in a while, too. Can you give us the meaning behind that song, Runaway?
Yeah. It's not a happy one. So
I kind of figured that.
No, that song started with Slush Puppy. That was actually the one that Matt Pinfield played on K-Rock.
Okay.
In 2003, and then we redid it with a new lineup and re-released it on the record, and that's probably the version you're playing.
Yes.
So that song, with Slush Puppy, we had a bass player who was a great person but very troubled, and now kind of looking back after what I've learned, I think he was manic depressive, and I didn't know it. I didn't recognize mental illness back then, and he did a lot of drugs and to kind of run away from his demons. And he was constantly sort of in the band, then out of the band, then I quit. No, I'm back, and it was like this back and forth with him, and it was sort of a habit that I saw, a pattern with him, that he was always running away from his problems instead of facing them, and the use of the drugs was just another way for him to run away. And so that's what that song was. It was a pleading to him to like get his life together. And then after Slush Puppy broke up in 2003, I kept in touch with him, but in 2008 he took his own life. And so that song has taken on such a deeper and darker, more meaningful meaning, because now when I sing it, like he basically did the ultimate running away.
Right.
And but I recognize that he was in so much pain, and now looking back on it, I feel like he thought that he didn't have a choice. So yeah, that's. But the good thing is, like, every time we play it, he's always in my heart. He's in Gary's heart, and so when we play it, it's very meaningful.
Very cool. Now you mentioned you have a current project going on here, and the latest song is called "The Broken." Talk about that, and then talk about the album too, which is in the process of coming out.
Yeah, definitely. So the album has 8. Might have 9 songs on it. We're sort of in the middle of figuring that out. It's turning out really, really great. The sound quality, just everything is turning out great. We're so excited. And The Broken was one of the first ones that I was able to get all the vocals done. So I asked my producer, can we just please release it? Like, let's get it out as a single. I don't want to wait until we have the rest of the album done. So we did, and, it was, I started writing it, and I came up with the chorus of The Broken early on in the year, and it was just supposed to really be about, I've met so many people that have seemed so broken and so lost, and that need help, and, but at the same time, I look at them and they're so strong because they've overcome so many things. And it was my way of saying to them, you have to see how strong you are. Instead of looking at yourself as somebody who's broken, understand that there is strength in being broken and having overcome. And then during the whole election cycle, we just had, and our country being just so divided, and I've myself have been in lots of debates and passionate conversations about the country and where it's going and what's right and what's wrong. And then we've had all these protests around the country. It just seemed like it was a natural fit to have the song celebrate those that are protesting, and I didn't want it to be about a particular side. I didn't want to take sides in this song, but I wanted it to be about people that feel that they have been oppressed, and that they feel scared, and they feel like they're being put upon, and that their rights are being violated, and that they're standing up and they're saying, "Look, we're broken, but we're not gone."
Right.
And so that's what the song's about.
Very cool. That's the one thing too. You get into politics too, and there's each side's got their own way of doing it. But for the most part, I think rock artists really haven't been on which side, this way or that way. There's a few outspoken that I could name. I'm not going to name, but for the majority, I think everybody's just kind of staying in their own lane for the most part. At least when it comes to the rock world.
It's weird. Like this, I might get in trouble for saying this, but I think rock and roll used to be, back in the 80s, back in the 90s, rock and roll was very mainstream.
Yep.
Right? It was
a
genre that was above pop, and now pop and all these other genres have kind of taken more the mainstream audience, and rock and roll is more niche. And I think where it thrives really well is in the middle of the country, and I'm going to say it's in the red states a lot of places.
Right.
I think a lot of musicians, we tend sometimes to be more liberal because we're artists, and I think artists just tend to, again, I'm making a huge generalization, and this does not apply to all artists.
There's that attorney in you, by the way, there.
I know it is. It's the attorney, right? You're right.
Exactly.
I have to put a disclaimer on it.
There's the disclaimer, by the way. No, I agree with you on that. Yes.
And so I think what's happening, because I talk to a lot of artists privately, and they're like, I don't want to alienate my audience,
right?
And I feel the same way. It's like, look, I don't pretend to live their lives. I don't know. I can't say what another person is thinking. I haven't walked in their shoes. I haven't lived their life, and so I don't want to make judgments. But I do want to sort of, make observations about what I feel, because I am an artist. Like, I've seen online some people get mad at certain artists, like Henry Rollins and others who've spoken out, and they're like, oh, they should just shut up and make their music. It's like, wait a minute, we're artists. What do you think why we're so passionate and what we're singing about? Like, we see the world and we feel the world, and so we're going to have opinions. That's what our art is about.
Right.
Unless you want us just to sing about broken hearts and relationships the whole time. But, rock and roll back in the 60s and 70s it was always stick it to the man and, anti-war and anti-Vietnam and all this stuff. And it's like, I don't know, sometimes I feel like we've lost our identity.
Rock has, I think, stood the test of time, regardless of what it is. And I'm hoping, I'm praying, and I'm believing that it is making a comeback again. I think people are getting annoyed with other genres and what they are doing. And I'm hoping that rock can eventually get back to where it was, like you said, back in the 80s and the 90s when it was more mainstream.
Yeah, the one thing I think rock is very authentic.
Yes.
Right? I think nowadays it's like it kind of has to be authentic, because if you're not willing to carry your heavy gear and load it into a car or load it into a van and then carry it into some divey bar, where you'd be lucky if the bathrooms have a door on them half the time, right? I mean, that's what it takes. Like, you go out there, you're playing rock and roll, and even these bands that, like I said, like tour full time, that's what they're doing. That's what they're sacrificing on top of not seeing their families for months on end and living in a van or living in a tour bus. I think to make those sacrifices, it's just so authentic to who you are, and I think people are getting, they're relating to that as opposed to a lot of the sort of music that's made in the computer and that's very electronic, and a lead singer comes in and sings for 5 minutes, and then the computer manipulates the rest of it, right?
I agree.
You're right.
One thing I love doing on this show here, we're talking with Dawn from the band New Day, Dawn. And Chris, you've been around in the business for a while, so which is great. What I'd like to do is there a band or bands out there that you know of that you think, man, these guys or gals should be really hitting on the radio, but they're just not getting the airplay yet. So kind of, is there maybe some up-and-coming bands that you know about that should interest myself and our listeners out there?
Oh, wow. Oh, that's a good question.
I kind of put you on the spot, I know.
I know, and I'm probably going to name bands that you're like, yep, I already know about them. Another Lost Year.
Yes.
They're a favorite of mine. I don't know if you guys play them yet.
Yes, we do. Yep.
Yep, see?
Yeah, they're I want to say they're out of Iowa, too, aren't they?
Where is Clinton from?
Yeah, Clinton.
Right.
Kunanen, right? Or Kunanen?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. We actually just went on the Shiprocked cruise in January, and those guys were there. And
how was that, by the way?
That was crazy. I mean, the only thing that sucked is we weren't playing.
Oh, okay.
we went. It was my husband's birthday, and I surprised him with tickets. So we just went to have a good time, which we did. But I was like, I want to get on stage. Let's see, bands that are up and coming that you haven't heard of. There's a great band, New Day Dawn. Have you heard of them?
Yes, I have. In fact, we're going to play their latest song here in just a moment, so we got to let our listeners know that coming up here.
Oh my God, I'm probably going to think of like 100 of them after I hang up with you.
Well, you can. What you can do is you can send me a list of those that you are up and coming, and then in the future when we're playing some of your music, I'll remind our listeners to want more information about New Day Dawn. They can go to our Facebook or YouTube, listen to the interview we're doing right now. And then I can also say, oh, by the way, Dawn did email me back and said these are some up-and-coming bands that you should check out, too. Will that work?
That's perfect.
That'd be great.
Because I do know so many of them, and I'm just, like, not remembering off the top of my head.
That's okay. How about this?
Other than ones that you would know, like Otherwise, which
yes.
They're not really an up and coming, but they're absolutely amazing. I don't know why they're not bigger. They should be like as big as Shinedown, as far as I'm concerned.
Adrian Patrick has got a hell of a voice.
He does. He had another baby.
Okay.
So now he's got two.
And
yeah, so
he plays with his brother too, correct? In that band?
He does. And so they just replaced their drummer a little while ago, and they were kind of huddling and making a new record. And I guess while he was huddling, he had another kid because we're friends. And I saw on Facebook that. So
very cool.
That just makes it that much harder to get away. It's like now you're not just leaving one baby; you're going to be leaving two.
Right.
Oh, I know another band. So John Moyer has a new project with Scott Stapp and Bumblefoot called Art of Anarchy.
Yeah,
they just released their record. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, their latest song, The Madness, right now we're playing here on The Dark, too. So lots of stuff. Lots of stuff we could get to, I'm sure, Dawn. One last question I got to ask you here is, this is a question I've always asked every artist out there. What artist would you like to cover one of your songs?
Oh. Well, I would love for Pat Benatar to cover one of our songs.
Okay.
Just because it would be so, you could probably hear the siren.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're in...
I'm in New York City.
Well, I was going to say, you're in the Big Apple, so somebody's getting busted.
It's like every 5 minutes. So I think that would be totally cool. I'd love to hear the lead singer from Saints of Sonia.
Okay, Adam Gontier?
Adam, yeah.
Yep.
I was going to say 3 Days Grace, but now he's in Saints of Sonia.
Yep.
I'd love to hear him cover one of my songs because I love his voice.
Yeah.
And it'd be cool to have a male perspective on one of our songs.
Let me ask you this. How do you feel about this? How do you feel about, big name lead singers like Adam Gontier, a whole bunch of them, but then obviously having band issues and then moving on to other places and that. Does it then ruin the image that you had of that band before or not? I mean, that's a pretty controversial question, right? So it's a loaded question, I should say. So I'm really good friends, and we've toured with the guys from Saving Abel. Yes.
So Saving Abel's one of those bands that lost their lead singer.
Yep. Jared Weeks.
Jared.
Yep.
Yeah, he wrote a lot of their songs, and so they've been trying to sort of redefine their identity. And Scotty Austin is an amazing frontman, and he's an amazing singer.
Yep.
But it's a different band. It doesn't mean it's not as good band. It's just a different band than it was, right?
Right.
But I don't blame those bands. Like Hinder does this, doing
Yep.
the same thing. I don't blame those bands for using the name, because the hardest thing is to get known, right? I mean, that's the biggest hurdle. Like, in order to get people to come to your concerts, they have to have heard of your name.
Right.
And then when they're there, you can win them over. So it wouldn't have made sense for any of these bands not to keep touring under their name. They've worked so hard. And so I give a lot of respect for those bands that keep on going no matter what members of the band that they lose.
Right.
But yeah, bands are like a family, and so, there are divorces. They happen all the time.
Yeah.
And you got to just do what you got to do.
Absolutely. I figured I'd ask you that question. Since you're an attorney, you'd have a good answer. You had a great answer on that. That was awesome. I always thought that, though. I always thought that, though. I mean, I know the guys from Jared Null and Scotty and all those guys from the band Saving Evil really well. And, that is a band, that I tell you what, though, nothing against Jared Weeks and that, but Scotty Austin does bring a different element to the band than Jared did. He has a lot more energy, I think, out on stage. So, it's just...
Yeah, no, he does, and he's so appreciative to be there, right? I think you get a band... If they're not getting along, it's going to translate on stage.
Right.
And those guys in Saving Abel, they're brothers. They really love each other. They really care about each other. I actually know them quite well. I said, I help bands out, legally. They're one of the bands that I do some contracts and stuff for.
Very cool.
So, they're great guys. They're very humble and appreciative, and they work their butts off. I mean, they tour, 360 days out of the 365. I mean, it's just crazy.
It is. We're talking with Dawn of the band New Day Dawn, and I know we got to wrap things up here, but Dawn, how can people here in central Minnesota find out more information about your band, New Day Dawn?
They can pretty much go on any social media site and type in the words New Day Dawn, and we should pop up. We have a very active Facebook page. Our website is www.newdaydawn.info. We've got a YouTube page, but if you go to our Facebook page, you can listen to all of our songs. We're on SoundCloud. You can buy our records on iTunes and Amazon and all of that. So really just type in New Day Dawn with one footnote, which is there is another band in Germany called New Day Dawn Bonn, Bonn. And so if you find a song where they're singing in German, that's not me. That's not us.
Okay. You're not bilingual that way then, at least.
We're not, and I got to set the attorney side of me keeps saying I have to send them a cease and desist letter, but whatever. Gotta do that.
Gotta do that. Oh boy, we could talk forever, Dawn. It was a lot of fun talking to you and getting to know you. And when is the new album coming out? Do you have a date on that yet?
We don't have a date, but we are planning for a June release.
All right.
So we've just got some more vocals to do. And I'm actually doing an Adele cover, too, a hard rock Adele cover. So that should be kind of cool.
That'd be very cool. I'm looking forward to that. Hey, a lot of fun chatting with you, Dawn. Best of luck to you back getting at it again here, and hopefully things go well for you and your family.
Thanks, Jay-Z. It was so nice talking to you, and thank you to all your listeners out there for sticking with us and for listening.
The latest song is The Broken. It's the band New Day Dawn. You're hearing it right now. It's on The Dark. It's on FM 94.